Story time!
Story time! Story time!
Story time! Story time!
Itch! Howdy, folks, and happy Thursday to everyone. My name is Timothy Vilgiate.
And I'm Christopher Fox.
And you're listening to Two Lies and One Truth,
a relatively new storytelling podcast on UCCS Radio.
On this show, we bring you 3 stories. Only one of them's true, and it's up to you to decide which one it is.
Not that we'll tell you.
Of course not.
That would be ridiculous.
This isn't a communist podcast. We're capitalists, and you have to work for things.
The theme for this episode is love. The first story is written and performed by Timmy.
Music in this episode is written and recorded by a witchy folk punk duo from Canada known as Stick and Poke. These 2 foxy individuals will be going on their American tour soon, so be sure to check them out. If you'd like to submit a story or your music to our podcast, just let us know on our Facebook, 2 Lies and One Truth.
They're changing all the time. My eyes are as blue as the sea. We'll keep on running till we're as far as can be. 'Cause I'm a weary traveler and aimless wanderer. I'm cautious and I'm wary. You're reckless and you're fairly impulsive and unruly. We're bound to meet up surely due time. Our stories are forever entwined.
It was 1 a.m. in the Walmart parking lot. I had a rose, a soda cup, and some duct tape. I needed dry ice. Like, I really needed it. Not like I needed it because someone was going to die, but like I needed it in the sense that, so help me God, I was going to freeze this rose and keep it in my freezer until I could get it preserved in some glass or something like that and use it to propose. I always wanted someone to give me a flower. As in, I'd written about it in all of my journal entries since middle school, and no one I'd ever dated or been with had ever given me a flower. It had only been me, and oddly enough, every relationship I'd ever had started to fall apart the moment I gave the other person a flower. I was thinking about that on my way to her house earlier today. I was thinking, damn, I wonder if I should bring her a flower. I mean, it's not like it's really cursed, I don't think. But then again, I mean, what if it is? So I was stuck on the way there since it was summer and there were lots of beautiful wildflowers alongside the road that I just wanted to stop and pick so I could bring them to her. But then again, this was mostly on some very, very busy roads, and I was already driving pretty slow because I was in a beat-up car from the 90s that was held together with duct tape and prayer. And on top of that, I was looking out the window for flowers instead of watching the road. I wanted to pick the flowers, even if they were probably cursed, but I decided to give it a day. So far, that seemed like a good way to handle the problem of the flower curse. Every time I saw a flower, I would make a mental note of where it was so I could pick it later. But, I thought to myself, it would be really nice for her to give me a flower first. I pulled up to her house and she came out, and providing further evidence that we are telepathically linked in some strange way, she handed me a flower. A beautiful red rose. It was so sweet and so indescribably perfect. My entire world lit up, and I spent the rest of the day in a romantic haze, thinking about how sweet this girl I'd found was and how perfect she was for me. We went hiking together, and later I went to work. En route, I made up my mind. This is it, I said. This is the girl I'm going to marry. I've only known her for 2 months, but yep, this is it. I spent most of the time closing at work trying to figure out how I could preserve the flower. I knew nothing about that, but I figured I could freeze dry it, hold on to it for a year or so, and eventually have it cased in some sort of glass. This was not based on empirical evidence, but rather based on the sort of logic that leads you to conclude that, given that your girlfriend of 2 months probably broke an imaginary curse by giving you a flower, you should propose to her. So that's how I ended up at Walmart at 1 a.m. Now the tools and why I had them. The cup, I imagined, could be used as a chamber for the flower to be stored. It would be held upside down by its stem so that it didn't break down due to gravity. The duct tape would wrap around the lid, sealing it from any air. Last but not least, perhaps most importantly actually, was the dry ice. Now, once upon a time, I was trying to prepare for the end of the world, so I read a book by James Wesley Rawls about doomsday prepping, and I learned that you can extend the shelf life of grain by using dry ice to force out all the oxygen, which kills most of the pests. It made sense. Carbon dioxide is heavier than air. Dry ice is carbon dioxide but solid. So here I was at Walmart. It's hard not to look nervous when you walk into a Walmart at this hour of night, let alone this Walmart. This Walmart, shall we say, has a reputation. If there's a stabbing at a Walmart in town, people assume it's one of 2 Walmarts. and this one is probably their best guess. But it was also the closest Walmart, and I wasn't about to drive 15 extra minutes for something as trivial as not getting stabbed. I rolled down the broken window of my old beat-up car and opened it from the outside before dragging the window back up so that it was almost up to the sill of the car window. I liked to give the window some space in case the car finally exploded or something and I needed to pry my way out. The resale value of this car is probably only about $200, maybe $300 if you pretend it's still street legal. I gathered my things and made my way to the front door. I imagined that I looked suspicious, if only because everything you do at Walmart at 1 a.m. looks suspicious, but also since I was imagining I looked suspicious, which probably made me look more paranoid than I should have been for a routine 1 a.m. dry ice purchase. Unless America has truly lost all of the freedom that makes her great, you should be allowed to purchase dry ice at any time of day you want. I perked up my chin and straightened my posture. I was going to propose to a girl, and her needed dry ice. I told myself, they have no right to question what I'm doing. This is totally normal. I strolled past security, this Walmart has a lot of security, and made my way to the dry ice counter. I knew right where it was since when I was a kid I would look at the dry ice box and ask my parents if I could buy some. In 3rd grade, I read on the internet that you can make a laser with CO2 and some special glass, and I was stuck on that ever since. Yeah, instead of asking my family for normal things like clothes or video games, I asked them to buy me dry ice and mirrors so I could build a laser. It never worked, but it might have, if I wasn't in elementary school, and if I had access to lots of specialized equipment, and I guess if I was some kind of scientist who builds lasers. Anyway, I knew right where the dry ice was. But I never bought dry ice, so I asked the lady behind the cigarette counter if she could help. She was a lady in her 30s or late 20s with a pair of glasses and was very polite to customers who were rude to her, but I could imagine that it was easier behind the cigarette counter since you can have the satisfaction of knowing that if someone's rude to you, they're probably going to get cancer anyway and you'll be able to have the last laugh. You know, when they die. Can I get some dry ice? I asked, trying as hard as I could to not sound suspicious. She didn't know how to get dry ice. I don't think that many people buy dry ice at Walmart. Less people probably are making lasers in their basement than I imagined would have been when I was a child, but her manager helped me out. She asked how much I needed. I stared at my cup. She looked at me suspiciously. Anything you do at 1 a.m. at a Walmart is suspicious, even if well-intentioned. Maybe half a brick? I can break it to fill up the bottom. That sounded about right, she said. As she got the ice out, she asked me what I planned to do with it. I'm proposing to someone, I said. They gasped. They gave me this flower, so I'm going to freeze dry it so I can save up to have it eventually cased in glass. That sounded romantic, they said. The only other person working the registers agreed. Well, crap. So much pressure. Now this had to work. I tried to put the dry ice in the cup, and I realized that it would touch the petals of the rose. Frustrated, I went to the drinking fountain and set my tools gently down on top of it. My first thought was that I could melt the dry ice with some water. It started to make it get smaller, and eventually it slid down to the base of the cup, emitting a thick white smoke. As I did, I overheard a customer I'd seen be rude to the lady who helped me re-enter the store and complain about something. She handled it gracefully. Eventually, though, she needed to call the manager. I gave up on the water. My freeze-drying chamber had too much water in it now to actually deserve the title of freeze-drying chamber. I carefully removed the dry ice to place it back in its bag, and then wiped the cup clean. I scrambled to think of what I might be able to do. Did I have a pen? No, of course not. People never have pens when they need them, unless they're one of those freaks who needs to write stuff all the time, or like a manager at Walmart. My keys might work, I thought, although I was also worried I would accidentally destroy them. The manager had taken the customer who was complaining into the customer service area where I was preparing to mutilate a cube of dry ice with my car keys. The two of them had a very grim and serious conversation. They prepared to crush the dry ice, and a loud shrieking sound came from the key. "Oh my God!" I gasped. The lady at the counter who had sold the dry ice to me looked over. "I'm trying to break it," I said. She told me I was fine. I just don't want to destroy my keys. I looked for a pen in my pocket again, but it was no use. Maybe this was all stupid. Maybe I should just propose to this girl with something normal. Maybe... No, not today. I was not giving up on this. This rose was going to be freeze-dried, covered in glass, and then given to my girlfriend. We were going to get married and build a log cabin together somewhere in the forest and have 3 beautiful children. And you know what? They'd be allowed to try to build lasers in our basement, unlike some kids who probably just wanted to see if it could work, but got told no 1,000,000 times by their parents. And when they did, they'd ask me, "Hey, Dad, do you know anything about dry ice?" And I'd say, "Hell Yes, I do. You see that rose over there? I froze that with dry ice when I was 21 and I gave it to your mom. And they'd say, wow, Dad, that's awesome. Do you want to help me build a laser? And I'd say, yes, I do, because otherwise you'll spend your whole life wondering, what if? What if I had built a laser? And they'd say, okay, Dad, whatever, let's go to the store. I was going to break this block of dry ice. I jammed the key into the block and it let out an awful screech, almost as bad as the brakes on my car. For about 2 minutes, I struggled and struggled, gaining the occasional glance from the manager and the disgruntled customer. Smoke filled the glass, and I worried for a moment I would melt all the dry ice before I could ever split it in half by pressing into it with my car key. I needed something more sharp, like an ice pick, or a jackhammer, or a pen. Hey, I thought, the manager has a pen. I set the dry ice back on the drinking fountain. Hey, can I borrow your pen? I think that might work better, I asked her. She gave me this look. It was a, who the hell are you and what are you doing here look. Not the nicest look. But I don't blame her since it was now 1:30 a.m. and if it was suspicious to come into a Walmart at 1 a.m., it was even more suspicious to have stayed there for 30 minutes. Sure, she grumbled before returning to her customer. I dashed to the brick of ice and in a frenzy, like I was trying to kill Caesar or something, I started stabbing it with the pen. Only a few smaller pieces broke off before the manager shouted, striding towards me, Hey! Hell no! Not here, not today. Get out. Get out and give me my pen. Embarrassed, I handed it over and collected my things, walking as quickly as I could out of the store. I knew this would happen. I knew that there was no way I could enter a Walmart at 1 a.m, purchase dry ice, and not get kicked out. I burst out laughing when I left the store and then looked through my car for a pen. I found one after some struggle and proceeded to try and stab the ice a little bit more. No luck. Again. Damn. I sank back before I decided to work on it at home. My mom knows me well enough to not find it too out of the ordinary for me to return home at 2 a.m. to stab a brick of dry ice with a knife. As I prepared to pull out of the parking lot, freezing cold cup of dry ice in my hands, I jerked to a stop. I'd forgotten my duct tape. Just buy some somewhere else, I told myself. You're just going to let those Walmart people steal your duct tape? I answered. That's your duct tape. You worked hard for that duct tape. You shed blood, sweat, and tears for that duct tape, and you're just going to leave it there like it's nothing? No, you're not. Defiantly, I left the car. Though I thought it was ridiculous on one level to be re-entering the Walmart in order to retrieve a $2 roll of duct tape left on top of the drinking fountain after I was just kicked out for using the manager's pen to stab a sheet of dry ice, it was also the principle of the thing. I wasn't sure what principle specifically, but generally, the principle of the thing was what stood out to me at the time. It was late. I was tired. The manager was standing next to the security guard. And then he just starts stabbing this thing in his cup with my pen. And I'm like, hell no. Do you think he was on something? Oh yeah, he was definitely on something. Hey folks, I shouted as I entered. Left my duct tape. I'm sorry about that. The two of them stared at me blankly as I walked to the drinking fountain, took my duct tape and left, with a sense of purpose, although I was still slightly offended deep down. I was not on something. I wasn't high. The only thing I was on, as corny as it sounds, was love. A deep, strange, and delirious sort of love that would probably take me years to completely understand. Someone gave me a flower, and what might have been the most banal, ordinary thing to anyone else was suddenly my most prized possession. The 5 minutes that I pulled up to her house, suddenly taking place among the most important moments of my life. I didn't know why. I just did.
As you head down south, they'll go east. We'll follow our hearts till we're both at peace. But I know it's not our fate to suffer through a good old-fashioned heartbreak. 'Cause I'm a weary traveler, you're an aimless wanderer. I'm cautious and I'm wary, you're reckless and you're fairly impulsive and unruly. We're bound to meet him surely in due time.
Please tell me that was true.
Yeah, I won't.
Well, alright. What do we have next?
This next story is another love story. It's about a guy and how he fell in love with a significant other. It might shock some.
Shock. Like, how?
You'll see.
We'll find a little mountain and we'll climb right to the top. We'll grow our own vegetables and there won't be any cops. We'll build a little cabin and we'll live with all our friends. Make our own community and our hearts soon will mend.
This is the story of how I fell in love with my boyfriend Adam. It was our third date. On our second date, we had talked about some of our favorite movies. Adam found it unacceptable that I had never seen Eraserhead. I found it unacceptable that he had never seen Lilo and Stitch. And if that doesn't tell you all you need to know about our two personalities, I don't really know what will. For date number 3, we agreed that we'd cuddle up on the couch and watch both movies. The morning of the date, I was really nervous. We'd only just started dating, but I already really liked him. He was a singer, like me. He loved video games as much as I did. He was ludicrously smart and ridiculously funny. He was the most attractive person I'd ever dated. When he smiled, I literally felt weak in the knees. To be honest, I felt a little shocked that a guy this perfect wanted a date with me. As the time of the date grew near, I got more and more nervous, but I tried not to let it affect me too much. I hopped in the shower and cleaned myself off. I picked out an outfit that I felt made me look my best and put it on. I went up to the mirror and messed around with my hair until I found a look I was satisfied with. Now, fully prepared, I went out to the living room and grabbed Lilo and Stitch from the shelf. Adam had mentioned that he didn't own Eraserhead, so I hopped on Amazon and rented the stream for it. With both movies now queued up, I waited for Adam to get there. Not long after that, I got a text. Just rolled up. Which apartment is it? H106, I replied. A few seconds later, a new message popped up. I'm kind of hungry. You want to grab a bite before the movies? He asked. I was pretty hungry, actually, so I agreed and left the apartment to meet him in the parking lot. I looked around the parking lot and saw him waving at me next to his car. He had on a light blue shirt with a logo I didn't recognize. Beneath the logo were the words Volcom, the only constant is change. He wore a pair of black capris that showed off his strong calves. He had on a loose-fitting pair of flip-flops. He hated shoes. Foot prisons, he called them. He smiled as I walked up to him and my heart raced. He opened the passenger side door for me, but hugged me before I could get in. The hug didn't last as long as I wanted it to. I climbed into the car. Where to, he asked as I closed the car door. I could go for some breakfast food, I replied. Oh, I could totally munch on some eggs right now, he said. And I know a good place nearby here. It wasn't a long drive to the diner, but I couldn't help but stare at him the whole way there. He was so handsome. He sang along with the car radio and I felt entranced by him. I kept thinking about how lucky I was to be with him. Once in the restaurant, I ordered the French toast and Adam got the Denver omelet. I had never been to this place before, but let me tell you, it was damn good. Before, during, and after the meal, Adam and I told stories back and forth. It was great learning more about him, and I loved seeing him enjoy the stories I told. Before I knew it, we had spent a solid 2 hours sitting in that restaurant. We agreed that it was probably time to get out of there, so we paid our bill and headed on back to my place. Not long into our drive home, I spotted a large rock formation. Adam noticed me looking at it. That's Pulpit Rock. Ever climbed it, he asked. Can't say I have, I replied. Not that I want to, I thought. Let's do it, he said. At this point, I'm thinking, oh God, I hate hiking. I don't want to do this. Adam looked into my eyes, and before I knew it, I had agreed to climb it. Adam pulled the car into a dark parking lot and killed the engine. I stepped out of the car and felt a sense of dread at the hulking mass of rock that loomed over me. There was some ill-defined paths that seemed to be formed by others making their way up. Adam sprinted up the path with reckless abandon. Oh, sure, leave me behind, why don't you? I thought. Here we go. I followed after him at a much slower pace. Adam leapt from rock to rock with little thought. My movements, on the other hand, were more calculated. I had to be sure that the rock wouldn't move before I committed my full weight onto it. Occasionally, my careful planning backfired, and I slid down the dirt and fell even further behind Adam. About halfway up, I came to a rock that stumped my logic. I couldn't put my foot in any crevices. There weren't any smaller rocks to boost me up. I looked around but couldn't see Adam anymore. I just found myself thinking, fuck this. Fuck this, fuck this, fuck this. I hate this. I'm out of breath. Who does this for fun? Damn it, this sucks. He's wearing flip-flops. How is he going so fast? Ugh, fuck this. I looked up and saw a hand reaching out to me. Haven't done this much, I take it, he said. I laughed. What can I say? I'm not exactly the outdoorsy type. I reached up and grabbed Adam's hand. It felt nice. I didn't feel as exhausted as before. I felt like maybe I could do this. Adam helped me up the rock, and I didn't let go of my hand once he had done so. I was glad. We steadily made our way higher and higher up the face of the rock. Sometimes Adam would go first and then pull me up. Other times he would insist I lead while he told me where to step. After one final rock, Adam and I found ourselves staring at the view from the top of Pulpit Rock. As I stared out, I thought, I did it. Holy shit, I did it. That sucked, but woo. My thoughts suddenly ended when I really started to look out at the view. I could see the Rocky Mountains every day, but from up here they were different. I could see the trees on the mountainside, the snow nestling snugly at the peak, and could almost see the wind dance through the hills. The mountains looked so close. Adam squeezed my hand and I came out of my trance. He turned to me and smiled. He pulled me, leading to a rock where we could sit on. I sat and resumed my dumbfounded admiration of the city I'd always lived in, but never really seen. Adam reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone and a pair of headphones. He put one bud in his ear and offered the other to me. I have the perfect song for this, he said confidently. I took the bud and put it in my ear. I listened to the sound of the wind rushing all around me as Adam shuffled through his playlist. Ah, there you are, he said. I looked down at his phone and read the title. The Jam by General Fuzz. I'd never heard of it. Adam hit play. It was beautiful. A single-stringed instrument played a dulcet melody accompanied by a soft and gentle beat. I imagined that this was what the wind sounded like rustling through the trees on the mountain. I closed my eyes and leaned back on the rock. I felt at peace. Adam scooped up my hand and held it tightly. I sat up and smiled at him. Not a smile just big enough to be noticeable, but a big, warm, can hardly contain it kind of smile. Adam started to lean a little closer and my mind raced. Oh my God, he's gonna kiss me. We're gonna kiss. I'm so happy. Do I keep my eyes open or should I shut them? Open, shut. Open, shut. Oh, who cares? He's gonna kiss me. Adam kissed me and the thoughts stopped racing around in my head. His lips pressed against mine made everything else disappear. It was in this moment that I knew. This is the person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with.
Reality is bittersweet and it tends to bring us down, but it helps to know when times are tough there's friendship to be found. We'll sing about our dreams in the hopes that they'll come true. Even if they don't, there will still be me and you. So let's take off to our mountaintop and leave this all behind. Let the moonbeams clear our clouded thoughts and cleanse our weary minds.
That wasn't that shocking, more adorable than anything.
If you thought that was adorable, just wait for this next story, read by Christopher Fox and written by A. Wesley.
We wish you the best of luck with your endeavors, Wesley.
Can you tell us anything about this story, Chris?
Sometimes, it's just better to listen.
Warm nights and sleeping with the trees, with nothing but moonlight to guide our feet. Beaten trails won't make us feel alone. In a place like this, we can rest our weary bones.
Closest I ever came to experiencing love at first sight was the day I first spotted Joanna at school. The way she met my gaze and returned my smile made me feel as though I had stumbled upon Christ himself walking the earth, and it happened in the most mundane of places. I was stunned and only managed to bark out a hello, which was returned, but I felt like I had failed the encounter. I didn't know a single thing about her. I was a freshman, and it was apparent to me that she was older because I didn't see any of the brand of confidence she projected among the underclassmen. I asked my companions if they knew of her, and it happened that my closest new friend's longtime girlfriend knew her through the honors college. Everything I learned about her seemed to justify the pedestal that I had placed her on, and reinforced my assumptions. She was a senior, studying animal science. Over time, I learned that her hobbies included improv comedy, intramural soccer, roller derby, playing both guitar and piano, drawing sketches and comics, among many others. I thought I'd never met someone so diversely involved and interesting. Most of this I learned from what is these days referred to as Facebook creeping, but I prefer to call it amorous reconnaissance. Technology seems to have replaced all the legwork that one would have put into scoping out a potential partner, even just 10 years ago. Some weeks later, I saw a flyer on campus for the Cricket City Improv Halloween show. I couldn't pass up the opportunity to see her perform. She was dressed as the egg half of an egg sperm couple costume. The show was pretty funny. I was awed by her wit and the accents she counterfeited. She spotted me in the crowd and suppressed a smile. When the show ended, the comedians threw candy into the audience, and I exited as quickly as I could. She came out into the hallway and looked really pleased to find me waiting for her. She had taken off her white hat, and her long braids fell around her hair. I told her how much I enjoyed the show, and asked her if she was interested in going on a date with me, to which she replied, "I am, actually." We were both all smiles as we traded numbers. I was going to one of the fraternity's Halloween parties that night. She was going to a costume party hosted by the president of our university. I was both impressed and intimidated, and was afraid that she was so very far out of my league. She was making the most of her few years trapped in this beautifully shitty small college town. I was wasting my time with a large percentage of the freshman population medicating their ills with drugs and alcohol. About a week later, we planned to see a movie together. That meant that we were going to have to drive down to Pueblo, which had the closest theater. I was ready. I had gotten a haircut and a shave. I cleaned all of the trash out of my car, and I was supposed to pick her up from her improv rehearsal. That day of school was a little different than the other days. Not only did I wake up late, but my roommate and his friends, all Korean exchange students, were late for a math test and needed a ride. So I hastily prepared myself, dropped them off at class, and parked on campus. Professor Knoll's class on the poetry of World War I was truly intriguing. Dr. Swift was in a mood and lectured us on proper work ethic instead of economics. Walking out of class, I ran into one of my friends, and he invited me to lunch. We walked back to the dorms to meet up with the rest of our friends. I woke up from a nap with plenty of time to prepare for my date. I preened and dressed myself for the evening. It wasn't until 20 minutes before my date that I realized I had left my car on the other side of campus. I panicked, because I knew none of my friends could help me out of this, as I was always the one driving them. I took a deep breath and thought about what I had to do. It took me a full 10 minutes to run across campus in my evening clothes and shiny shoes. I arrived at the car with just enough time to get to her. I was still out of breath when I pulled up to the Fine Arts Building. Joanna wore a blue suede dress that matched her shining eyes. I had to clear my throat and collect myself to tell her, "You look great." We were going to see a horror movie being screened for Halloween that she had picked. She gave me directions as I drove. But a curious thing happened that night. When we arrived for the movie, which we'd selected from the schedule on the theater's website, we found the place closed and deserted. Rotten luck, perhaps. But perhaps brilliant luck. During the 15-minute drive back to school, we decided to rent a movie from Family Video. She told me that she used to work there and that parents would sometimes bring their kids and rent children's movies alongside pornography from the adult section hidden in the back. I was astounded at the range of experiences she had while at school, and surprised at the same time that a video store with the word family in the name could still rent porn. She turned out to be a film buff, and we loitered in the favorites section for some time before deciding on a classic we both had been meaning to see. We went back to her place in the honors dorm and put in the graduate. Her place was decorated very tastefully. I was convinced that she had it all together and that she was happy. I held her hand during the movie. When the end came and Ben was running across town to stop the wedding at the last minute, I had to admit to her that I had done basically that to be on time for our date. Much to my chagrin, she laughed and said, "I thought you seemed a little out of breath." We talked for a little while, and I left when I felt the time had come. I stood in the doorway saying good night to this beautiful woman that I had been pining for, and I couldn't let it end without a kiss. She wasn't expecting it because it was a split-second decision. I leaned in to kiss her, and I missed. Just an inch to the right, and it could have been perfect, but I missed. We smiled at one another, embarrassed. I said the words, "Good night, Joanna." As I walked out of her building, my heart overflowed with bashful feelings and excitement. I nearly swooned for the love of her. In the following weeks, I felt the need to start collecting experiences, but school was picking up, and I had to put more time than ever into my coursework. I had lunch with Joanna occasionally, but weeks turned into over a month without a second date. I was convinced that I just wasn't worth her time. I didn't get to know her well enough to identify or even notice any of her flaws, which lent to my idolization of her person. To this day, my mental image of her is something akin to angelic perfection, something reserved for cherubs in paintings. I remember writing in a letter that I never sent to her that I didn't want to be involved with her because I knew I would only hold her back. I couldn't imagine a man worthy of her, or one that could make her happier than I imagined she already was. It was only a few months later that Joanna came out as a lesbian. I was not overly surprised, but what shocked me was realizing how unhappy she must have been. I was too busy deifying her for it to occur to me that she might be in a strange and pivotal point in her life. Part of me wishes that I had known, or that I could have helped her in some way. I could only hope that I did so unknowingly. There's a common trope these days, a tendency to put some sort of blame on the last guy to date a girl before she comes out, as though his possible shortcomings had influenced her decision. Far from being ashamed, I would be proud to know that I helped someone during an identity crisis in any capacity. I doubt very much that I had influenced her at all. I know now that she had been denying her sexuality for some time. Years later, I still occasionally talk to her online. I know that she graduated, and she lives in Denver with another beautiful woman. And she honestly seems truly happy. Happy like I always imagined her to be. The two of them have a very photogenic cat named Pepper, and an adorable Sheltie named Wesley.
We're gonna walk this road together, just like the way we did back then. All I need is the sunlight and your hand. I hope this summer never ends. I wanna start forgetting the people who brought me down before and stop regretting not having them in my life anymore. So let's get to setting off on the road to somewhere new. Just me and you.
Well, that's all, folks. Next week, we'll be taking a slight break, but we'll return on April 6th for stories of reasonable trips like to the store. Then our next episode on April 13th, we'll tell stories of parking.
The parking stories sound scary.
Why is that, Chris?
Have you ever tried to park at this college?
Well, special thanks to Jon Latham and the UCCS Writers Guild, Wesley, and of course, the witchy folk punk duo Stick and Poke. Check out their latest album on Bandcamp entitled Never Going Back. Also, check out their tour schedule for their upcoming American tour. We'll provide links on our website and on our Facebook so you can look into them more.
I was pretty bad for you when you were really bad for me. And sure, it's the time for us to realize cold reality. I'm gonna head outside, cause I just might pass out. There's no room for me to think in this crowded little house. And I can't handle, oh my god, not another awkward encounter. Oh my god, my anxieties are in the gutter. Oh my god, I think I need another cigarette. I think I need another cigarette. What you never understood was that my heart was somewhere far away through the woods and over the plains where my family members are. But you'll never understand because that bridge is burnt up fast. It's claustrophobic in this room and I don't wanna pass by you. Oh my god, not another awkward encounter. Oh my god, my anxieties are in the gutter. Oh my god, I think I need another cigarette. I think I need another cigarette.
If you need to repeat anything, just go uncomfortable.
Okay. So I just start?
Just start whenever you're ready.
Okay.